The hidden line between forgiveness and self-destruction. There's a conversation almost no one dares to have about relationships. We're raised on mantras of endless forgiveness, to turn the other cheek, to always give one more chance, to believe that love heals everything. But beneath that comforting illusion lies a cruel truth. Some actions fracture a relationship so deeply that forgiveness isn't noble, it's suicidal. Because there comes a point where forgiving another becomes the slow process of erasing yourself. This isn't a call to bitterness or vengeance, it's a reality check, the kind that saves you from mistaking emotional endurance for love. As the old saying goes, compassion without discernment is self-betrayal. And the most dangerous relationships are the ones that make you believe that your pain is proof of your loyalty. There are acts so poisonous that accepting them means signing away your self-respect. They may not all leave bruises, but they leave cracks in your sense of self that never quite heal. The first of these is systematic lying, the slow corrosion of truth that begins with harmless omissions and ends with a world built on deception. I'm not talking about surprise parties or sparing someone's feelings. I'm talking about the kind of person who rewrites reality itself, who lies about where they've been, who they're with, how they're spending money, what they're doing when you're not around. Once lying becomes routine, they're no longer protecting you from discomfort. They're protecting their double life. I once worked with a man whose partner started with tiny lies, prices of things, who she was texting, why she got home late. He thought calling it out would make him controlling. Then came the discovery. A second phone hidden in her car, tens of thousands of dollars of secret debt, and stories she'd told others painting him as an aggressor to justify her absences. What destroyed him wasn't just the deceit, it was realizing she'd rehearsed those lies for months. Chronic liars don't lie by accident. They start small to measure your silence. If you don't confront the small things, you're training them to lie bigger. The second unforgivable act is public humiliation disguised as humor. You've probably seen it. A partner who mocks your dreams at dinner, who makes your vulnerabilities the punchline at social gatherings, who jokes about your weight, your job, your insecurities, and then calls you sensitive for not laughing. But humor isn't harmless when it costs you dignity. When someone consistently laughs at you instead of with you, it's not humor, it's hierarchy. They're testing how far they can chip away at your confidence before you stop fighting back. I once counseled a man whose wife constantly joked about his income in front of her friends. Over time, he stopped speaking in social settings. By the time he realized it, he hadn't told a story uninterrupted in years. As psychologist John Gottman warned, contempt is the single greatest predictor of divorce. Once a partner looks at you with disdain, the relationship isn't sick, it's terminal. The third unforgivable act, emotional manipulation and blackmail. This is the weapon of those who cannot control through reason, so they control through guilt. They'll threaten to harm themselves if you leave, cry to win arguments, or twist your compassion into a leash. If you loved me, you would, becomes the mantra of a manipulator. They know your heart, and they exploit it. Real love never needs to be proven through suffering. It doesn't turn guilt into currency. Emotional blackmailers are masters of psychological hostage-taking. They use your empathy against you. As Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's any reaction, both are transformed. But manipulation ensures only one person transforms, the other dissolves. The fourth act to never forgive, violating your boundaries under the guise of love. It sounds like, I just needed to know where you were, or I looked through your messages because I care. They say it's because they love you so much, they can't help themselves. But that isn't love, it's surveillance. Privacy isn't secrecy, it's identity. The moment someone starts monitoring your every move, they're not protecting the relationship, they're patrolling it. I knew a woman who installed tracking software on her partner's phone for peace of mind. Within months, she was calling him every hour, questioning every expense, every coworker, every errand. What began as love became an interrogation chamber. Once you normalize being watched, you're no longer in a relationship. You're in captivity. And then comes the line that should never, ever be crossed. Physical aggression of any kind. A shove, a thrown object, a wall punched an inch from your face. None of it is love losing control. It's control revealing itself. People often excuse it with, they were drunk or they were stressed. But alcohol doesn't create violence, it reveals it. Stress doesn't cause aggression, it exposes character. The scariest thing about physical abuse is its progression. It starts with gestures. Then comes the push, then the slap, then the punch, until your body starts learning fear before your mind does. One man told me his girlfriend would throw objects when angry, plates, glasses, whatever was in reach. He stayed because she always apologized, but apologies without transformation are just rehearsed performances. People who hit don't hit everyone, only those they believe won't leave. That's not loss of control, that's selective cruelty. Each time violence or humiliation or deceit is forgiven, a dangerous lesson is learned, not by you, but by them. They learn that harm has no cost, that love is unconditional obedience, that your boundaries are mere suggestions. And that's how abuse evolves, not through a single act, but through your repeated forgiveness of it. But here's the chilling truth. Not every form of abuse screams through bruises or yelling. Some destroy quietly, through financial control, isolation, and emotional starvation. Those are the ones most people never recognize until it's too late. Not every wound bleeds where others can see it. Some of the deepest forms of abuse disguise themselves as care, love, or protection. They don't shout, they whisper. They strip you of freedom in small, almost invisible ways, until one day you wake up and realize you've been living inside someone else's script. The bruises are psychological, but the damage is permanent. The sixth unforgivable act is financial manipulation and control. It's one of the quietest, most common weapons in toxic relationships, yet one of the hardest to detect. It doesn't begin with theft or exploitation. It begins with, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," or "You don't need to work, I'll take care of you." What sounds like protection slowly becomes dependency. Suddenly, you need permission to spend your own money. Your financial autonomy dissolves, and with it goes your ability to leave. I once met a woman who gave her husband full control of their finances because she thought it showed trust. Years later, when she discovered he'd drained their accounts, maxed out their credit cards, and hidden his income, she couldn't even afford a lawyer to escape. Money isn't about greed, it's about freedom. When someone hides money, uses yours recklessly, or sabotages your work, they're not being careless, they're keeping you on a leash. Financial control isn't love, it's captivity disguised as commitment. Then comes the seventh unforgivable act, systematic isolation. It rarely starts with orders, it starts with subtle persuasion. Your friends are a bad influence. Your family doesn't respect me. I just want you to myself. Each statement sounds romantic at first, until you realize what's happening. They're not removing distractions, they're eliminating witnesses. Isolation is the abuser's best friend because it severs you from reality. Once they become your only voice, theirs becomes the truth. A man once told me he hadn't spoken to his best friend in 3 years because his girlfriend said the friend didn't understand their relationship. He didn't notice that every disagreement with her ended with him losing someone else. Friends, family, hobbies, gone. By the time he realized, the only voice left in his life was hers, and it was the voice that broke him daily. When you lose your community, you lose your compass. Love should expand your world, not shrink it. The eighth unforgivable act is infidelity, and not just the physical act. It's the conscious betrayal of trust, dignity, and emotional safety. Cheating is never a mistake. It's a series of deliberate decisions to desire, to deceive, to lie, to risk, and to destroy. Every text, every secret meeting, every excuse, each one is a choice that says, my pleasure matters more than your pain. People love to justify betrayal with context. We were fighting. I was lonely. It just happened. But nothing just happens. Every affair is constructed step by step, brick by brick, lie by lie. One woman told me her boyfriend cheated during a rough patch. When she confronted him, he said, "You pushed me away." But love doesn't vanish under pressure, it's revealed by it. A rough patch doesn't justify treason. And statistics don't lie. Those who cheat once are hundreds of times more likely to do it again. Cheating isn't an accident, it's a revelation of character. When someone betrays your trust that completely, believe what they've shown you. The ninth unforgivable act is weaponizing vulnerability, the ultimate act of emotional betrayal. This is when someone takes your deepest fears, secrets, and wounds and turns them into ammunition. You tell them about the abuse you survived as a child, and one day they sneer, "No wonder you're broken." You share your insecurities about your body, and they spit them back during an argument. You open your heart, and they use it to aim straight at your soul. When someone does that, they're not trying to win a fight. They're trying to annihilate your self-worth. Every time it happens, a part of you closes. You stop being open, expressive, honest. You start walking on eggshells around the person who once promised to protect you. And the saddest part? That betrayal lingers long after the relationship ends. Because once someone teaches you that intimacy is dangerous, it takes years to unlearn it. The 10th unforgivable act is the cycle of abuse followed by love bombing, a pattern so deceptive it traps even the strongest minds. It's the rhythm of chaos and calm, of hurt and hope. It begins with rage, shouting, insults, blame, and then suddenly flips to tenderness. The same person who tore you apart yesterday is now holding you, apologizing, showering you with affection. You mistake relief for love. You start believing that the brief moments of kindness are proof that they're changing. But they're not changing. They're recalibrating control. Love bombing isn't love, it's a drug. The dopamine high keeps you addicted to the illusion that things are getting better, when in reality you're trapped in a loop of psychological warfare. Over time, the good phases shrink while the abuse stretches longer. The punishments get harsher and the apologies grow cheaper. It's not romance, it's a reset button for the next round of destruction. I knew a man who went through this exact cycle for 10 years. Every time he tried to leave, she would promise therapy, sobriety, self-reflection. For a few weeks, she'd become the woman he fell in love with. But as soon as his guard lowered, the mask slipped and the same cruelty returned. "I kept staying," he told me, "because I kept believing the good parts were the real her. But the good parts were bait. The love was never real. Only the control was. So why do so many stay? Why do people forgive the unforgivable, justify the inexcusable, and protect the person destroying them? The answer isn't stupidity, it's psychology. The longer you're trapped in cycles like these, the more your mind rewires itself around them. You start confusing anxiety for passion, guilt for responsibility, and survival for love. Why we keep forgiving the unforgivable. Here's the paradox of human emotion. People don't stay in toxic relationships because they enjoy suffering. They stay because they've been conditioned to call it love. When abuse comes wrapped in moments of tenderness, when manipulation masquerades as vulnerability, the mind becomes its own prison. You start convincing yourself that enduring pain is proof of devotion, but it's not love you're protecting. It's your hope that the person you loved might still be hiding somewhere beneath the damage. The first reason people keep forgiving the unforgivable is the sunk cost fallacy. You've invested years, time, money, emotions, maybe even children. You tell yourself, "I can't walk away now. I've put too much into this." But as every investor knows, throwing more into a failing venture doesn't recover your losses. It only deepens them. Staying won't give you those years back. It'll cost you the ones ahead. I once spoke to a woman who stayed in a miserable marriage for 12 years because she'd already given it 8. When she finally left, she said something that haunts me. "I thought I was saving my investment. I didn't realize I was spending my future." The second reason is fear of being alone. Society paints solitude as failure, especially for women and men over 30. We're told that love completes us, that loneliness means something's wrong with us, so we tolerate cruelty just to avoid the quiet. But solitude isn't a punishment, it's a detox. Being alone gives you something toxic love never will: peace. A bad partner makes you question your worth. Solitude gives you time to rebuild it. You can heal from loneliness, but you can't heal inside the same cage that broke you. Then comes the third trap, believing that love means endless forgiveness. You've heard it before. Real love forgives anything. But that's not love. That's emotional slavery. Forgiveness without change is permission. Forgiveness without boundaries is self-betrayal. The world teaches you that love conquers all, but in reality, love without respect conquers nothing. As the philosopher Alain de Botton wrote, "We are never so vulnerable as when we love." And yet, true love protects that vulnerability. It doesn't exploit it. The fourth illusion is the belief that understanding someone's pain excuses their behavior. You tell yourself, they had a traumatic childhood, or they're working on themselves. And maybe they are. But explanations aren't exonerations. You can understand why someone became toxic and still refuse to be their target. You can empathize without enabling. True change doesn't come with words or tears. It comes with consistency. A person who truly wants to heal doesn't need you to suffer as proof of your loyalty. They change before they ask for forgiveness, not after you've endured another round of pain. And finally, the fifth reason we stay, the normalization of dysfunction. When chaos is all you've known, peace feels foreign. If you grew up watching relationships built on shouting, control, jealousy, or silence, part of you confuses intensity with love. Even popular culture reinforces this lie. Movies glorify passion that hurts, jealousy that proves care, and arguments that end with kisses instead of boundaries. But pain isn't proof of connection. It's proof that something is broken. Just because dysfunction is common doesn't make it healthy. Just because it's familiar doesn't make it love. Here's the pivot point. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it, but awareness alone won't free you, and courage will. Because knowing you deserve better is easy. Acting like you do is hard. People cling to what hurts them because leaving means facing an even greater fear, rebuilding a life alone. But the truth is, the cost of staying is always higher than the cost of starting over. Every day you stay with someone who disrespects you, you teach them that it's acceptable, and you teach yourself that it's not that bad. Until one day, you look in the mirror and realize you no longer recognize the person staring back. So what does healthy love actually look like? It's quieter than you think. It doesn't need drama to feel alive or tension to feel real. In healthy relationships, disagreements don't turn into humiliation. Boundaries aren't violations to test, they're respected automatically. There's no need for tracking phones or decoding mixed signals. Trust isn't demanded, it's maintained. Love isn't a roller coaster, it's a steady climb built on consistency, honesty, and peace. It feels boring only to those addicted to chaos. Healthy love allows two complete individuals to coexist, not merge. It's a balance, independence without distance, closeness without control. It's the freedom to breathe without fear of abandonment, to disagree without fear of punishment, to express without fear of ridicule. When you find that kind of love, you'll wonder why you ever called the old one love at all. But here's the hardest truth of all. Understanding the poison isn't enough. You can analyze every red flag, diagnose every pattern, name every form of manipulation, and still stay. Because leaving isn't an intellectual decision, it's an emotional war. And that war begins the moment you stop asking, how can I fix them? And start asking, why do I keep forgiving what's destroying me? That's the moment of awakening, when clarity meets courage. But courage has a cost. The moment you act on it, everything changes, your life, your circle, your future. And that's what we'll talk about next, what it means to truly leave and what happens when you finally do. The courage to leave and the power to heal. The decision to leave isn't made in a single moment. It builds slowly, like pressure under the surface. Years of small betrayals, quiet humiliations, and the exhaustion of always forgiving what should never have happened. And when that final straw breaks, it rarely feels heroic. It feels terrifying. But make no mistake, walking away from someone who continually harms you isn't weakness. It's the highest act of self-respect you'll ever perform. The consequences of staying are never confined to the relationship itself. They ripple outward, through your health, your family, your career, your children's perception of love. When you tolerate the unforgivable, you're teaching the next generation that love and pain are twins. You're modeling endurance instead of boundaries, silence instead of truth. A man once told me, I stayed for my kids. Years later, his son confessed, I wish you'd left sooner. Watching you suffer taught me that love means swallowing pain. Staying doesn't shield others, it normalizes suffering for them. The toll is invisible at first. You lose sleep, then confidence, then the spark that once defined you. You start walking on eggshells, planning conversations around someone else's moods. You stop laughing freely, stop sharing openly. Even your body begins to carry the cost. Chronic stress, fatigue, anxiety, the slow erosion of your immune system. I've watched people lose their jobs, their passions, and their sense of identity while fighting to hold together relationships that were already dead. The truth is, when you love someone who continually hurts you, you stop living and start surviving. And yet leaving isn't easy, because abusers are rarely monsters all the time. They mix cruelty with kindness, punishment with affection. They hurt you, then cry in your arms. They destroy you, then say, "I can't live without you." But as psychiatrist Donald Dutton observed, abuse is never loss of control. It is the precise exercise of control. They don't treat everyone this way, only the ones they believe won't leave. They can restrain themselves at work, with friends, with strangers. Their self-control proves it's not a condition, it's a choice. That's the moment of awakening, when you finally see that their behavior isn't a reaction, it's a strategy. They don't lose control around you, they take control. And the longer you stay, the more you teach them that control works. So what happens when you decide to leave? First comes clarity, then chaos. People imagine liberation feels instantly euphoric, but it often feels like withdrawal. You've been addicted to the highs and lows of trauma bonding, to the hope that maybe next time will be different. When you leave, you're not just letting go of a person, you're letting go of a fantasy. But once the fog lifts, the air becomes lighter. You start sleeping better. Your anxiety quiets. You notice how peaceful silence can be when it isn't filled with tension. Your friends come back. Your family stops walking on eggshells. Life begins to breathe again. Freedom after toxicity isn't just escape, it's resurrection. I've seen men rediscover ambition they thought was gone forever. Women start businesses after years of being told they were useless. People who once doubted every decision begin to trust their own minds again. The return of self-trust is the greatest revenge against those who tried to dismantle it. Healing isn't linear. It's rebuilding brick by brick, boundary by boundary. But with every step away from what broke you, you step closer to who you were meant to be. Here's the truth that no one tells you. You don't need their permission to leave. You don't need them to understand why. You don't even need them to apologize. You only need to recognize that love should never cost you your sanity. Leaving isn't quitting. It's choosing yourself. It's refusing to spend another second proving your worth to someone committed to devaluing it. And if you're still doubting, remember this: explanations are not excuses. They were drunk. They're insecure. They had a bad childhood. Millions of people are stressed, insecure, and traumatized. They don't all become abusers. The truth is simpler. Those who harm others choose to. And every time you forgive without change, you teach them that choice has no consequence. The price of forgiving the unforgivable is always higher than the price of walking away. When you finally stop forgiving what destroys you, something miraculous happens. You start forgiving yourself. You forgive yourself for staying, for trying, for believing, for not seeing sooner. You stop needing to fix them and start healing you. You reclaim your time, your dignity, your peace. And for the first time in years, love stops hurting. There are billions of people in this world. The myth that you must endure cruelty because someone is your soulmate is one of the most destructive lies ever sold. Real love will never require your silence. It will never demand your humiliation. It will never force you to trade your peace for connection. Love is not meant to conquer you. It's meant to grow you. As Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Sometimes that change means walking away, even if your heart is trembling. Remember this: boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. Saying, "I won't accept lies" isn't harsh. Saying, "I won't forgive abuse" isn't cold. It's self-preservation. The world will call it unforgiving, but that's because the world profits from your tolerance. Real love has conditions: respect, honesty, safety, trust. Without those, it's not love. It's exploitation dressed in affection. So stop asking, "How can I make this work?" and start asking, "Why am I allowing this?" Stop waiting for them to change and start realizing this is who they are. You only get one life, one mind, one body, one chance to live it on your own terms. Every day spent forgiving the unforgivable is a day stolen from the life you could be living, one filled with peace, self-respect, and real love. The strongest thing you can do isn't to endure pain, it's to end it. The bravest act isn't fighting to stay, it's walking away. And the most loving thing you can do for yourself, for your children, for your future, is to stop forgiving the unforgivable. And finally, free yourself.